It's finally time. We are retiring our Jackery 240.
We purchased this 4 years ago. This thing has charged everything thousands of times. It's
our old little workhorse.
And our new power station is the Bluetti AC50B.
Yeah, and where they come up with these names, I don't know.
We're gonna go over the 6 reasons why we think now is a primo time to either upgrade your old decrepit power station or get a new one for the very first time.
You have found Explore Trek Adventure with Kelly and Greg. We cover everything camping from backpacking to adventure vans. Our number one thing is this thing has a capability of a quick charge. What does that mean? Well, when we wanted to get the Jackery fully charged, it could take anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. Well, this was roughly 1 hour, so it is quite a bit quicker.
That 1 hour quick charge is using the AC adapter. This thing will also support up to 200 watts of solar, which is pretty awesome because the old Jackery, I think, maxed out around 60 or 80 watts.
Before we go out to the van to show you exactly why this quick charging is such a big deal, you might be wondering, why do we even need this small portable power station when we have this big gigantic battery in the van?
We actually lost power for 12 days in our house. And if you know anything about having loss of power, 12 days is an excruciatingly painful long time. This little guy kind of kept us going. We actually would take it to an in-law's house that did have power and we would charge it. And that's where the fast charging really would come into play because we were only able to get like maybe half a charge before we had to come back. And we just never had enough power. When we're camping, we like our shade. And so if you know anything about solar doesn't work when you're in the shade. And also Starlink doesn't work usually when you're under the trees. Having a power station like this, we can take and we can have a good spot where Starlink actually works. These are also great on road trips. You can throw them in the car, then people don't have to fight for charging. Welcome to the van. Before I show you the fast charging, let me show you the 3 places we normally keep this thing. When we're using Starlink, we'll oftentimes put it up on the dash if it's not outside. And we'll stick the power station down there, gives it plenty of room, then people don't smash it with their feet. Second place we like to keep it, if we're just hanging out in the van, there's only 2 of us, so we have this seat and we stick that on there. People can charge. And the third place is over here, and we usually stick it over here when we're traveling. If you're not from the Pacific Northwest, this is how we roll in the winter. Now let's get to the fast charging. We like to only drive, if possible, less than 2 hours if we're doing a travel day. Why that is key is this van has a giant inverter and we can charge our battery in the back, that big 320 amp hour battery, from 0 to full in about 2 hours. What we can also do now, we can come up here, turn on the inverter if we're on a travel day. That activates this plug down here, right here. And all we need to do is plug this in and then plug this in here. And now while we're driving, not only is the car or the house battery charging, but now our power station is charging. And we've done this multiple times already. And whenever we get to our destination, both are totally full, totally awesome. You just don't have to worry about it. You just always are back to full. The last thing on charging is this has 3 levels of charging. We have standard, silent, and turbo. On standard, you can hear the fan that kind of kicks on. It's kind of just a muffled noise. On silent mode, it bumps that charging speed down to half, and it still does run the fan, which is I was kind of hoping it wouldn't, but it's really soft. On turbo mode, it doubles the normal speed that it would charge at, and the fan's blaring the whole time, but when you're driving, not a big deal. Second reason why upgrading from the older Jackery is to get rid of these pesky bricks. So like when you're charging your laptop, you got to use this on the AC plug. Same thing with like an iPad or something. Well, now you can ditch these. You don't need them anymore. On this guy, we've got multiple ports and there's 2 65 watt USB ports. So these will charge a laptop. And then there's one USB-A that's a 15 watt port. When you're out camping, you need to turn on your inverter to get an AC plug to work. When you turn on that inverter, it just basically burns power, even just being on. And so if you don't have to run your inverter, your battery is just gonna last a lot longer. Now with all the talk inverters, let me show you how you actually turn this on. If you hold down the power button, it turns on, I think it's 2 seconds. And then if you hit the DC, that activates these ports and then your port over here. And then you click on the AC. In a second you hear click, and then now these plugs are active. When you're getting new gear for camping, do your best to try and find stuff that runs on DC. For instance, we have an electric blanket. Well, most electric blankets will plug into an AC port so you can use it in your house. But if you look, you can often find a couple that will plug into the DC ports. It just saves power. Moving to the new power station, we go from 1 plug down to 2. We find ourselves not using AC ports very much because it uses too much power. But if you need to, this unit actually comes with a 700 watt inverter. And our old Jackery had a 200 watt inverter. So this thing is significantly bigger. They also have this mode called uplifting. And basically it takes that 700 and bumps it up to 1,000. But it can only be done with resistant loads, so like a heater, and it basically kind of cheats the system. I personally think the powerlifting mode is a little gimmicky. So if you're running something that if you need 1,000 watts, don't rely on that to do it. Just get a bigger power station.
And number 4, of course, is all important price factor. And of course, the battery size. We are actually looking to upgrade to the newer version of the Jackery 240. It had all the new features like the Bluetti has, but it was $249. When we did a little bit more research, we found that the Bluetti, twice the battery size, was only $279. So of course we had to go with the Bluetti.
Our 5th reason for an upgrade is this Jackery 240 is just a dumb power station. It has no fancy app. Well, all the new ones have an app on your phone. The app is pretty straightforward. You can click on your devices, you can click on your device, and it connects to the actual power station via Bluetooth. Although keep in mind, if your power station is off, you're not going to be able to connect to it. It has to be on because it'll go to sleep otherwise, and you'll lose connection. So here you can see we're at 81% battery. You can see I've got my AC port and DC port turned on. Well, I can click this DC, turn it off, and then look at that. Our DC ports are turned off. So it's nice. You can be able to turn on and off remotely. Why you might want to do that, oftentimes we'll stick Starlink up on the dash. And if we're laying in bed and we want to turn it on in the morning, I can just go over here and say, turn on the DC ports, and boom. The other nice thing in the app, if you click on the little menu up here, is you can see your charge modes. So right now we have it on silent. You can click on standard or in turbo mode, and that's where it'll charge super fast. Here you can turn on or off that power lifting feature we mentioned earlier. And then it also has some other eco features. So say if it's noticing that it's dropped below 10 watts after a certain amount of time, it'll actually turn those ports off to save power. It also has a firmware update. I have never updated the firmware on the Jackery 240 in 4+ years. So that gives you an idea that this is actually pretty cool because they can actually fix things. And we have actually updated the firmware once already on this. Our last reason is form factor. And if we look at the Jackery, you can see that it's a nice rectangle square cube shape, but it has this giant handle on the top. And what does that mean? Is you can't set anything on top of it. And when you're dealing with a van or honestly any camping scenario where you oftentimes have limited space, being able to put something on top of another thing, super critical. And you can save a lot of space that way. So I think that was a huge upgrade.
Nothing is perfect, and that goes for the Bluetti as well. Unfortunately, with this big battery size, it comes with an extra amount of weight. It is considerably heavy, at least for me. Whereas the Jackery, you can just toss this thing around. This, not so much. Since they have this flat surface, they had to move the handle in the back. And it makes it awkward. You're going to end up picking it up at an angle, so when you go to set it down, you're going to actually get the front of it down before it goes back. So there's more likely to get a bunch of junk in the dirt and grossness in the front of the power station itself. The handle itself is actually a smooth plastic, so it makes it feel a little bit slippery. I feel like if I'm not careful, I'm going to actually drop it. It'd be nice if it had like a little rubber cover on it. Make it easier to hold on to.
One last thing it would be nice to change is if you look on the Jackery, it's pretty simple, but if you look down here, it has the option and it shows you, it says 13 hours left and it can run 11 watts for 13 more hours. Well, the app itself doesn't have that option to show you that information. It'd be nice if they can add that. Since it's all software, hopefully they can add it in the future. One big complaint I often hear online is people do not want to invest into a power station because they're like, oh, it's going to degrade over time. Well, honestly, that's not really a big issue because these things now are slated to run for 3,000 cycles. And if you do the math on that, you can run these new power stations from 100% down to zero 8.2 years. That's running that every single day from 100% down to zero, 8.2 years. That's ridiculous. Technology is going to leapfrog before these things fail.
Now I want to hear from you. Are you Team Bluetti or Team Jackery? Or maybe something completely different? We'll put links for the Bluetti and the new updated version of the Jackery 240, if you're interested in that, in the description below, along with the solar panels that we use to charge these bad boys. Go watch this video next. You can find us at exploretrekadventure.com, and we'll see you next time.